Make sure you check out our online store where we work with our graphic designer to create stunning garment and product designs that feature a wide variety of aircraft types such as British fighters, World War II aircraft, American bombers, Russian fighters and much more. You can pick your favourite designs and personalise any items within our Redbubble store that range from clothing right the way through to stationery. All of our designs feature our logo so you can show your support for the channel while getting a quality product. You can head to our website aircrewinterview.tv and click store, or go to redbubble.com/people/AC interview. Thank you and enjoy.
Wow. Well, stories. I mean, most of the stories are just scary stories. So, times you're like, by the grace of God, here walk I. I remember one time we're getting ready to go to the aircraft carrier. And obviously, you work up to going out to the carrier. You do a bunch of what's called FCLPs, Field Carrier Landing Practice. And you go out to an outlying field and you do some touch and goes with LSOs on the station waving you. You come in for the break, and you tried to pretend it was just like the boat. Of course, it's not. But you're making an attempt. Yeah. So, and of course, the only time we could get the landing field out there was in the middle of the night. I guess like 2 a.m. in the morning, because all the RAG students are going at the normal times. They don't want to send them out there in the middle of the night. They want them to have a fair chance at it. So our Charlie time was 2 a.m. So we launched out of Oceana at 2 a.m. Of course, it's a misty, rainy, nasty night on the East Coast. And of course, we're going out there VFR. And you'd fly out a certain radial, and you'd hit these lights, which was the women's prison out there. You'd take a certain heading off that, and you'd find the field, 20 or 50 miles, direct on this other radial. Well, you get out there and you do your stuff, and you're coming back. Now, you're all alone. Nobody's talking. It's rainy and misty, and came back to Oceana. And Oceana had a 12,000-foot runway, 11.9, something like that. So you come in for the break and you land. Well, the Tomcat, when you'd land, after you land, you put the stick full aft, because it put a lot of drag on the aircraft. And at 100 knots, you start the brakes. You're like, no problem. Nice quiet night. You do the brake, land. Stick aft, and you hit the brakes, and nothing. And you start sliding. And I'm like, this isn't good. Because, we're good in the Tomcat. We've got a hook, and there's a wire at the end of the runway. Yeah. You throw that down. Something's going on. You keep going straight. But I'm already, as soon as I touch the brakes, one kind of grabbed a little bit, and we're sliding sideways down this runway and turning. And I'm, so now you're kind of like, what the heck do I do? Now, as a side note, the Tomcat had a 00C. So you can eject on flat ground, and you're perfect. But once you went off an edge, any edge, you were no longer in the envelope, and you'd hit the ground, and kind of deadly. So you're going to die from the ejection. So you need to eject before you get off this runway. Well, we're sliding down this runway. The only benefit is we're going straight down the runway, but we start turning. I've got the brakes locked up, and we're rotating. Now, how many times we rotated? I don't know. I swear it's 50 times. Maybe one or two. Hard to tell. But in the middle of the night, sliding down at 100 knots down the runway. I mean, yeah. Well, we're coming to the end, and we're slowed down a bit. We're probably maybe 40 or 50 knots now. And the reason we're sliding was this black ice on the runway, but you couldn't see. Just completely clear ice. It done a sheet on this runway. And so we're sliding down. Well, we're coming to the end, and I look over, and I see where the last turnoff point to get off the runway, there's a taxiway over the side. And I realized that we're going off the end, because the end is probably 200 feet beyond this. So I just jacked up the throttles, and we're just having to kind of point in that direction. Not exactly, but pretty close. The engines catch, and I shoot off the runway. And I'm sure my reel's going, what are you doing? Anyway, we get on the taxiway, and just by the grace of God, there was no ice on the taxiway. It was just on the runway. And we just stopped. I mean, and it jolts. I mean, it is a hard jolt, because I've got the brakes completely locked up. And we hit this dry thing, and the jet just, I mean, you swear they just tore off a tire. And we just stopped. Now, in the Tomcat, the reel always did the talking to the ground, and, it was a good job for him. And at this point, my reel can't speak. I'm like, hey, and I won't use his call sign because I don't have his permission, and I would, but I'm like, hey, and nothing. He literally can't speak at this point. So I call up the taxi, and Howard's like, Roger, Snake, taxi, taxi with ground. And nobody even saw us spinning down this runway, flying off the end. we get back, and I got the seat pan out of my rear, and went in and had a couple cool ones because it was one of those nights.
Were they on you?
Oh yeah, man. Just by the grace of God. The another one we had one day was we were getting ready and we were coming out to the getting ready to go basically on cruise. We were going, and they wanted us to get used to flying a little lower, because we were getting ready for combat. It was serious. We had a 10,000-foot hard deck for the same type of aircraft, because when you're flying against another jet that has the same performance as you, the chances are if you fly right, you're going to end up with energy down at the ground. I mean, because nobody's better than that. I mean, what I'm saying? If you're flying the jet right, there's only so much you can do. So you just get into what's called a luftberry, and you just kind of slowly bleed energy and altitude because you have to trade it for something until you get down to the deck, and it's a knock it off. You can't beat the other guy. It's how it's supposed to be. Well, I was flying with my lead, and my lead, you have to understand there were different levels within a squadron. There were guys that were better at it, just like on a basketball team, or a soccer team, football. Excuse me.
Football, yes.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? These guys that are better, they're all great players, but there are some guys that are better and some guys that aren't as good. Well, I'm fighting with my lead, and he was okay, and I was, we were dogfighting, and we were getting down, and we'd made the hard deck 5,000 now. So I'm behind him, and I'm pulling for the shot, and I'm just out of range for the shot. The Sidewinder is growling. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but the Sidewinder would tell you. It was like growling.
Yeah.
And I finally go, okay, the heck with this. I pull for the shot. I get a scene tone on the Sidewinder. Fox 2. Okay, knock it off. You're dead. Well, usually we're at 10,000 feet, and you trade all your airspeed for angles. You're like, whatever, I'll just hang here for a second. We're good to go. Because the Tomcat required 5,000 feet for a loop. Well, we're at 5,000 right now. Now, I'm at zero airspeed pointed down. Now, remember, that's 5,000 feet at 300 knots. But I'm at zero airspeed pointed at the ocean right now. And you're going, wow, I'm in a little bit of a bad place here, which I put myself in. You're full afterburner pointed to the ground. Now, things are starting to happen really fast because you're accelerating quickly, and you really want to pull back on that stick. But, if you do it below 270 to 280 knots, you're just going to pancake into the water. It's all over. So, I'm waiting, and you're holding this down at zero speed, pointing at the water, and you're seeing the horizon start to rise on you, and let's put it this way, it was very difficult. Well, I hit about 280 knots, and I start to pull. Went to 6 Gs, which is our best corner speed right there. And you can see the horizon coming up. And I don't know how close we got to the water, maybe 20, 30 feet. We came out. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. My reel was like, oh, that was great. He didn't even know what the hell happened. You're up here going, wow, we just about bit it on that one. Yeah, you live and learn, I tell you what, by the grace of God.